Hey everyone, Nubkeks here, and welcome to my tier list for Season 3 and the Zul'jin Patch. Actually, not just the Zul'jin Patch, a bit more than that as well. It's also going to include the balance patch that came out today. Is the 6th of January. This video should be coming out today as well. There was a balance patch which toned down a few of the heroes that were kind of dominating the meta a bit too much. I think they're still going to be strong, and we're going to get to that, but not as dominant as they have been. So let's dive right into it. We're going to break it down by role as per usual. So let's dive into the warriors. So for the warriors, I've actually increased the S tier for warriors. I've changed up the amount of heroes that are in the S tiers for all the different roles actually a little bit. I think to better reflect the current state of the game. I think there are actually 4 S tier warriors, and I have to say on the whole I feel like warriors are in a very, very good place at the moment in the game. They're quite strong, and the warrior that you pick in the draft can really determine which way the game's going to go. So the S tier warriors I have picked are Diablo, Artanis, Dehaka, and Zarya. These aren't actually in any particular order. I just think all of these are very, very dominant. I mean, Diablo, he just has so much tankiness and a lot of stuns at his disposal. So he's a very effective main tank for your team. Artanis has really surprised me in how good he has been. This very powerful bruiser, he does a lot of damage, and the playmaking potential of the Artanis swaps with Blade Dash and Phase Prism working together now, so strong. And Suppression Pulse is also very good at countering the kind of bloodlust meta that's there at the moment. Dehaka, amazing solo laner, great split pusher, global presence, very tanky as well, and then that vulnerability he brings. He has been nerfed quite a bit. I think he is still going to be S tier though, but they have kind of toned down those aspects of him that are most powerful. But still a big damage dealing sort of tanky frontline for you, enhancing your team's damage. And then finally we've got Zarya, who brings a bit more of a defensive mix. You kind of run her not as your main warrior, but in the place of one of your damage dealers. She does quite a lot of damage. The shields that she gives, nice protection for your team, and then good zone control with heroics as well. She has been very dominant for a long time. She's in a good spot. Maybe a little bit too strong. I don't know. All these maybe a little bit too strong. That's why they're S tier. But all of these warriors, I think the draft, whoever gets these is going to really determine which way the draft is going to go. They're very impactful. Next up we have tier 1. These heroes are also very, very strong in my opinion. It's funny though, with the in the S tier, right? Diablo, Artanis, and Dehaka all received a rework in the last patch. So it's just kind of strange how much the warrior meta has shifted up with them coming in. In fact, some of these warriors that were so dominant before have been somewhat forgotten. I think Chen stands out to me as the forgotten hero of is it the Ragnaros patch? The Ragnaros patch. Man, poor old Chen. People kind of forgot that Chen existed in the Bloodlust patch. He kind of fell off the radar. I think he's still just as good though. It's really strong solo laner. Chen is very, very good. Then likewise, I mean, just the staple warriors. I don't think there's anything to be said here. All of these warriors have been very, very dominant for quite a long time. One thing actually I will say is with Muradin, I think it's sort of a similar situation to like Muradin, Li Ming, and Falstad maybe. You got these heroes that used to be probably OP, but I don't know. I just don't know how good they are anymore. People aren't going to be happy to hear that. You know, people don't want to hear that Muradin might not be that strong anymore. It's just one of those things where I think it comes down to the hero difficulty, and people don't realize it or don't want to think about it. But you have, let's say, Muradin or Li Ming. They're heroes that are always picked at pro level, super contested picks. They're also extremely popular in Hero League, but their Hero League win rate is really bad. Why is this? Well, people say at the same time that these are really easy heroes, and I think that's the thing that I have an issue with, this idea. So you've got these heroes that are picked all the time in pro level, all the time in like just casual Hero League play. They're really good in pro level, but their win rates in Hero League are terrible. I think the obvious explanation is that they're difficult to play, and that the skill level of your typical players in Hero League and the sort of the coordination of that environment mean people just aren't making the most out of them, which is why the win rates are so bad. That is the obvious explanation, and I think it is true with Muradin, with Li Ming. Heroes that perhaps were overpowered or were the best in their role before, and that kind of disguised the fact that they were difficult. But I think there's definitely a reevaluation that needs to come in terms of some heroes, in terms of the difficulty level of the hero. People keep saying, you know, Li Ming is really easy, and I say, well, she works really well on pro level, but she's doing terribly in Hero League. The most obvious explanation is that actually she's not that easy aiming all those skill shots perfectly actually does matter, and that's actually very difficult. That's what I think. I think the same thing is true with Muradin. I think he's actually much harder than people think, but he tends to be the default tank that people go to, but they don't quite know how to make the most out of him. Anyway, just kind of throwing that idea out there. Tier number 2 then. Again, these are good, solid heroes overall. We've got the Anubarak and the Arthas reworks coming in. I think the Anubarak, I think they're both very strong, but you do need to pick them very much into their particular niche. So Anubarak is like a counter mage hero, and then Arthas is like a counter melee physical damage hero. They're both solid, but they really do need their niche. I feel like all these heroes are very good, but they need their niche. Johanna, again, you don't need damage. You want a lot of lockdown and CC, and you need a big safe tank. Johanna can be a good one with those ranged blinds. Good at stopping some of those ranged damage dealers and ranged stuns and stuff. And then we got Varian, very good at single target lockdown, but again, that's not always the thing that you want in the current meta. It's not always the best. And finally, we've got the tier 3 warriors. I think these ones are just significantly weaker. I think that's nearly true of all the roles we're going to be looking at. I think all the tier 3 guys are quite a bit weaker. Luoric, Sonya, Stitches, Cho'Gall. I just feel like there's nearly always better choices at the moment, especially considering how good the rest of the warriors are. It's going to be very rare that you're going to want them. Now, if you do get a very particular game where it does seem reasonable to pick them, it just perfectly fits what is needed. Like, multiple heroes have been banned away. The enemy team is an Illidan, and Sonya just fits super well. They don't have anything to counter Sonya. She's going to help you deal with the Illidan. Then fine, maybe Sonya's a good choice. But generally speaking, she's not going to be as good as like a Dahaka or even an Arthas or a Chen or something like that. Or Artanis or Diablo. Obviously, they're just going to be more impactful. You know what I mean? So there you go, guys. That is the Warriors. Like I said, I think the Warriors are in a good spot overall. And don't be dissuaded by the tier 2 thing. That just means that they're much more specific, and you're not going to be taking them all the time. There can still be circumstances where they're good. I mean, like Tank Varian is just Rex Tracer, for example. Really good against that, so that's worth considering. Alright, next up, let's move across to the Assassins. Alright, so Assassins, I've actually toned down the S tier a little bit this time around, and of course we have to see where Zul'jin ends up as well. But the S tier, I think, for Assassins in the current meta, in the current Zul'jin patch, I think Thrall and Ragnaros are the S tier Assassins. I think they stand just that little bit ahead of all the other Assassins that are out there. If you haven't seen the patch that came out today, Earthquake, now 100-second cooldown, which is way longer. It used to be 60, it's now 100. They made Sundering a bit better, do a bit more damage, though you never really use it for the damage anyway. And then Ragnaros, they toned down his Q damage a little bit, and they also nerfed Heroic difficulty, which was his level 20. So in the very, very late game, he's going to be weaker, with Heroic difficulty not being as dominant as it was, which I think makes a lot of sense, frankly. I think both of these heroes, though, I think they're both going to be dominant. I think they're both going to be S tier material, despite these nerfs. I mean, Earthquake, you're just going to be... It will probably still be up for every single big team fight. You're not going to be using it as prolifically. I can't even use that word. Forgot. That's a bad choice of word. You're not going to be using it as much as you would have before. For example, I think I was talking in a previous video of trying to use it more in order to get single picks and stuff like that. You're not going to be using it for that as much. You want to save it now much more for the team fight. It matters more that you use it correctly. But I think still, like, they're just so powerful, these two heroes. Self-sustain, semi-tanky, good wave clear, well, good solo laney type heroes with big team fight changing heroics in a way. I think both of them, yeah, they're both very, very good. And yeah, you're going to see these guys a lot, I think, as the Assassins. Tier 1 then are also very, very strong. I don't think there's any huge surprises here. One of the big ones to note is that Raynor has been nerfed in the fact that they removed the bug of Hyperion, which is interacting with all the basic attack talents. I think Raynor is still very solid. He still fits in the meta very well. Remember, we've got a lot of warriors, okay? A lot of warriors. We've got, I think, these sort of tanky, sort of self-sustaining melee assassins are kind of the dominant melee assassins. Just to skip forward a little bit, I think Rhaegar is still the best support. I mean, like, Earthquake is still there. You have a lot of stuff that Raynor's going to be good at. Raynor is good at standing back, protected by these tanky dudes at the front, and then wearing down tanky dudes on the enemy team. He just fits really well. Hyperion, even though it's been nerfed, still fits amazingly with, Earthquake. I still think it's the case that, if you get, like, Thrall, Raynor, and Rhaegar, you're probably just going to win the game, because that is just unbelievably strong. Imagine, like, Diablo on top of that, and a Zarya or a Artanis or something, and it's just insane. That Bloodlust empowered dive, really, really crazy. So yeah, I don't think he's going to be, he's definitely not going to be as dominant as before, but he still does fit the meta. I think he's still quite good. I think, as you see, I've also moved Lunara up. Tychus is up really high. Vala is there too. I think these sort of ranged heroes that can make use of Bloodlust, or that also scale well with slows and with these tanky front lines, are going to be really dominant. So again, Lunara, Raynor, Tychus are the ranged tank shredders. Gul'dan's also good at that. Vala's not awful at it. She's not as good as the rest. I feel like Vala's very squishy. I love Vala. She's my most played hero. I feel like, though, she has really dropped down. They've nerfed her quite a lot, and I think these other ones are better. And then you got Jaina for your burst mage. And then Kerrigan and Zeratul, just super dominant melee assassins as well, for that more squishy, kill-oriented melee assassin as opposed to Ragnaros or Thrall. I think they're very, 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 very strong as well. For Tier 2 then, Tier 2 are also good solid assassins. They're good solid assassins. You can't really go too far wrong with them. And I think, certainly, as opposed to the warriors, you might see these ones a bit more often, because it's just the way of it that you have, 2 or 3 damage focused heroes in every single game. So you're going to see a bit more variety, and their particular niches are going to perhaps be relevant a bit more often. I don't think they're going to be as relevant as these ones, but you're still going to see them. You might get a game, quite possibly, where Li Ming just fits really, really well. Could happen. So as you can see, I think all these heroes are pretty damn good overall. They all do something well. Probably the thing that will stand out most is that I've ranked Falstad kind of low here, and I do feel that's true. His damage is very weak. He's got very little damage. That's the price you pay for having a global, for having the safety of barrel roll, for having great wave clear, and then Mighty Gust is like this really teamfight and map control focused heroic. Well, if you've got all this utility, then you're not getting the damage, because otherwise the balance wouldn't make sense. If you had as much damage as, let's say, I don't know, a Tychus and then all the utility of Falstad, wouldn't make sense. He brings really good wave clear and stuff. I also feel that he's also more difficult to play than people assume. I think pro players and stuff, I've seen them play awesome Falstads, then I've seen a lot of other players try to play Falstad and really have very little impact, and you just have no damage. You have to be careful where you pick him, that you do have enough damage to actually get kills and to do stuff like that, especially against these tankier teams that are out there at the moment. If you've got a Falstad instead of a Tychus, you're going to have a lot less damage output, so that's something to watch out for. Then finally, actually, before we move on, I have Zul'jin. I couldn't get the portrait for Zul'jin quite yet, but we're going to go with this one instead. That is Zul'jin, though. I have him in at Tier 2. I think he's good overall. Again, I'm not sure exactly where in Tier 2 he's going to fall. I don't think he's quite as strong as these Tier 1 guys, but it's also a good time for him to come out and a good time for him to be in the meta, because, again, we've got this Bloodlust focused meta. He's safe. He can do a lot of damage. He can really be empowered by Bloodlust. So I'm quite interested to see how Zul'jin does once people learn how to play him a bit better. Also, the fact that he can be a strong solo laner is a pretty big deal. I think Zul'jin, he's going to be pretty solid. I don't think he's overpowered by any means. I think, he'd probably do a bit better in Quick Match in some ways. With Tazdingo and stuff will work better in Quick Match. But, yeah, I think he's going to be a good, solid, all-around hero. He might even be Tier 1. It's possible. I don't think he's going to be S tier, though, by any means. I don't think he's Tier 3 either. I think he's, good, solid, in the middle. Can work very well and suits the meta pretty well, too. And finally, we got Tier 3. I feel like these heroes are just quite a bit weaker in terms of the assassins. Even Greymane with the armor, I think he's still... I don't think it's enough to actually make this guy good. He's been so weak for so long. I think more changes are going to be necessary to see Greymane be good, unfortunately. Then the other one here, Varian, I just don't think, at higher levels of play that Varian is that strong. I think their other assassins just do much more, and they do much more before level 10. I think his win rate on Towers of Doom and stuff is pretty good, but apart from that, I'm pretty leery of the Varian. I don't think he's that good. He's another very, very overrated hero at high level play, in my opinion. I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but that's definitely what I think. We'll see. If his win rates improve, I will move him up. But as it is at the moment, I don't think he really has demonstrated that he deserves a higher place. That's what I think. Anyway, let's move on to the support heroes, and we'll see how things are doing there. I think it's no surprise that Rhaegar is tier S. Rhaegar is back. Holy shit, Bloodlust is just so much better than we ever expected it to be, I think. I knew it was going to be good. I didn't realize it was going to be that good. But Bloodlust is insane right now. Rhaegar is just super powerful. He is just he's head and shoulders really above the rest of the supports. I think even with the Bloodlust nerf, I think he's still going to be head and shoulders better. And whichever team gets Rhaegar has a huge impact on the draft. Then suddenly they get so much more value out of heroes like Artanis and Thrall and Rhaegar and Rhaenyra and stuff like that. You know what I mean? All these heroes that scale amazingly well and synergize amazingly well with Bloodlust. Suddenly they become even more powerful. It just fits so well with so many other things like Earthquake and Bloodlust, insanely good together. Artanis and Bloodlust, even Artanis against Bloodlust with Suppression Pulse. It's pretty interesting. One thing I will say is that Suppression Pulse, Sanctification, those things are going to be more impactful at countering it now because it is an 8-second duration as opposed to a 10-second duration. So there's going to be a bit more counterplay, but I still think that Rhaegar is definitely S tier and has a huge impact on which team's actually going to win and even on how the teams are going to draft. Then we got tier 1 up next, Malfurion, Tyrande, and Oriel. I think these are the next sort of level of supports. I do feel that there's quite a strict level here though that is not necessarily the same as with the assassins. I feel like the jump in the assassins is a bit smaller. I feel like this is quite a large power jump between Rhaegar and the rest of them. Malfurion, he's still very strong. Obviously, he does struggle a bit against Bloodlust. You know, just the enemy team dies on top of him. He's got low mobility. The roots and the silence are good, but the slow healing and his slow movement speed make him kind of a liability in that situation, which makes it difficult to pick Malfurion to trade against the Rhaegar. It does make it hard, and that's one of the things I've noticed, I feel, with this particular meta. Tyrande, obviously, is a really strong, I think it's a secondary support. I think she can even solo support as well. But I think as a secondary support, she's really good. Starfall works very well with all these big heroics too. And then she brings that single target kill pressure with the vulnerability and the stun and so on. Plus a little bit extra healing and spot healing. So yeah, Tyrande, she's not the most popular, but she's underrated. I think she's very good. And then we've got Oriel. I like Oriel a lot. Again, she synergizes very well too with these sort of hyper carry ranged guys I'm talking about, like Gul'dan, Lunara, even Rhaenyra a bit, and Tychus a bit. She works very well with them, gets a lot of healing out. She's got the knockback, stuff like that. Yeah, I think Oriel's very good. Tier 2 then, Karazim, Tassadar, Brightwing. I think these are all good heroes overall. I just don't think they're as good as the other ones. But, you're talking about a smaller hero pool here, so you're probably going to see them a little bit more often. I think Tassadar, again, he's super unpopular, especially with the removal of Duo Q. But I think he's better than people think. And yeah, I mean, they're solid heroes overall. I don't think they're as good as these, but you'll probably see them a fair bit because, again, we're talking about a small hero pool. And finally, we've got tier 3. I think these ones are quite a bit weaker at the moment. Like Uther, Lily, Morales. I think at high level, we're talking about high level play here in particular. I just feel like they're a bit weak. Sure, you've got some combos with Uther, Divine Shield, or Morales, Healing Beam, and Zul'jin, but I don't think that's good enough by any means. I think, all of these heroes really struggle against, the Bloodlust type thing I'm talking about. Morales is super vulnerable to being, to dives. She's super vulnerable to Artanis. She's so vulnerable to so many things and only has single target healing. Uther, he's just a bit weak at the moment as well. I think the tier 3 heroes are quite a bit weaker, but potentially they could see some play. I don't think it's as bad as like the Warrior or the Assassin tier 3, where I think that it's pretty bad to pick them in ranked, honestly, for the most part, unless it's a really specific circumstance. I think the circumstances for picking the support tier 3s can come up a bit more often. But there you go, that's what I think of the supports. Next up we have the specialists, and I have to say, poor old specialists are in a bit of a rough spot at the moment. With the heroic focused, team fighting focused meta that we've had, that's where specialists fall off, because they're just not as good at team fighting as assassins are, typically. So they're having, on the whole, I would say a pretty tough time. I think with the nerfs that have come through this patch, though, we're going to see specialists come back into things a little bit more. I have decided to keep Sergeant Hammer in the S tier. I was very close to not having an S tier at all for specialists this time around. But with the changes that literally just came through today, a couple of hours ago, I took a step back and I said, okay, well, this changes things, and this makes actually these specialists a bit more appealing. I think Sergeant Hammer can take back her S tier slot. I think she's very strong. She creates a lot of pressure. You have to play around her. Obviously, though, she is very vulnerable to, Artana swaps. She's very vulnerable to Bloodlust dives, being caught in an earthquake, all that sort of thing. So you do need to be careful. But I do think that Hammer can be very strong in the right circumstances, and she synergizes well with stuff like Bloodlust as well. Tier 1 then, actually we've got a bit of a change here. I've moved Nazebo up to Tier 1. I think Nazebo is actually pretty solid at the moment. Early game, kind of crap, but he does scale pretty well, especially into the late game, and I think Superstition is an amazing talent, and in the circumstances where it does fit, can be incredibly impactful. He brings good zoning, pretty good damage. I do like Nazebo as this sort of sustained ability damage based damage dealer. I think he's pretty solid overall. I like him. Zul and the Lost Vikings, the same as they've always been, just as strong really. Tier 2, I've moved Sylvanas down to Tier 2. Paralysis got removed. I think she's still fine. I think she's still good overall. Definitely an overrated hero though. Definitely an overrated hero. And you definitely need to be careful of the weaker. She's obviously not as good at team fighting. Let's say like Vala functions somewhat similarly to Sylvanas, but Sylvanas brings more utility and map control. Vala brings more team fight damage and team fighting prowess. So you have to beware with Sylvanas, certainly, of having a bit of a lower team fight impact. Or people like to pick. I think the thing with Sylvanas is that she gets picked on maps with pushing objectives, and when she wins really hard. But then when she doesn't win, it's pretty unimpactful. I think overall it works out that she roughly wins, about half and half. She's not that good. She's just okay. She's average enough. But it's more obvious when she does well that Sylvanas is making it do well. So I think she's a bit overestimated. She's still solid. She's still good, but not as good as she was. I mean, I had a rank game the other day, and some dude was like, take Sylvanas. I was kind of saying, hello, Raynor is open. This was when Raynor was bugged. It's like, Raynor is massively more powerful. The bugged Raynor, massively more powerful than Sylvanas ever was. I think it was Infernal Shrines. And we did win the game in the end. Anyway, Tier 3 then. A little bit weaker here again, but I do feel like they're quite niche, and you can run the specialists in some circumstances. I think overall, you have to have a good reason to run specialists. They're quite comp and quite map dependent, more so I'd say than any other role. So I feel like Tier 3, they're going to be useful the least often, but you will fit them in sometimes. Except maybe Murky. I think Murky is probably just a bit too shit overall to use, probably. The rest, maybe. You just have a Murky tier. I'm sorry, Murky fans. I'm not feeling them too much. But yeah, I think it's kind of self-explanatory in terms of the Tier 3 specialists here. They can all be good in very specific niches, but they need to really fit the compositions. They need to really fit the map as well. And there you have it, guys. That is the tier list. I hope you enjoyed and found it helpful. Again, to go over stuff, we've got the warriors. Exciting and very fresh warrior meta that we have in here. These new warriors kind of newly refreshed and coming back into the meta. And then poor old Chen, who is forgotten. Anubarak and Arthas, they're probably the big ones on people's minds. I think they are strong. I don't think they're S tier or tier 1 OP by any means. I think they're good though, and when you do fit them to their niche, and that's very important with these heroes in particular, that you fit them to their niche, they could be quite good. For example, Arthas could be quite good at countering like a melee heavy Bloodlust team, probably work pretty well. Anubarak good against mages, that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think they're good. I don't think they're overpowered, but we'll see. Assassins then, I still think Thrall Ragnar's on top. Quite a big focus on kind of the ranged hyper carries at the moment. But I think there's quite a large pool of assassins that you can draw from that are all going to be quite acceptable. I think there's quite a lot of room for movement and room for choice in terms of the assassins and what kind of way you want to draft, what composition the enemy team has, and what you want to counter, and so on. Though I'd probably steer away for the most part from tier 3 ones. Varian and Kelthis probably you can pick up quite a bit. I do feel like Chromie, Gaul, and Greymane are going to be useful. Very rarely are they the best pick. Very, very rarely. But anyway, supports then, relatively the same as it has been for a while. Just simply that Ray God is back, and then everyone else is a bit below. But apart from that, kind of the same sort of tiering of supports that we've had for quite a while. Then specialists, again, I don't think they've changed much. Nazebo has moved up though, and I think the specialists were quite weak in the previous patch. weaker than I thought, considering the power of those teamfighting heroics. But they're going to see a bit of a comeback, I think, in this patch, considering that these teamfight heroics have all been nerfed overall. And yeah, there you go, guys. That sums it up. That is the tier list. Tried to keep it a bit shorter and sweeter this time around, which means I didn't explain everything, but hopefully some of the things didn't warrant or didn't need explanation. I don't know. Hope you guys found it helpful. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Let me know any feedback that you want to give. And yeah, one thing I am considering doing is that maybe looking into some sort of website or having a tier list somehow. I'm not sure exactly what way to do it. I know that some other content creators have like a Word document that they can link to and update. I think Grubby does it through his stream. So just kind of linking it in some way. I'm not good at like the marketing side of things or the business side of things. I just like making the content. So I'll probably talk to people. I know, because I know this sort of stuff is important in inbound marketing and all that, and you know, have your tier list linked into your channel in some way to promote yourself and your brand and stuff. I don't know, but I might work something out like that so we can have. I don't want to do these videos too often. I'm liking the way it is now. You know, about one of these tier list videos every month where I kind of go through the big changes. But I think, you know, a smaller, maybe weekly update or something, not in a video, but in some sort of written format would be quite good as well, because sometimes these smaller changes, for example, this balance patch that came out today was actually quite a big deal. So having that stuff kind of represented and updated weekly, because the meta does even shift and change over the course of a patch, I think that could be important. But certainly this is a good background, a good stable base to build a tier list on, and to give you a really good insight, I hope, into the Zul'jin patch. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, guys. Hope you enjoy Zul'jin, and yeah, I'm actually quite hopeful for this patch. I'm quite hopeful. I was worried that we weren't gonna have a balance patch for a while, so I'm happy they brought it out like 2 days after they released Zul'jin. I'm very happy about that, because we had these. It was just the Rhaegar Diablo Raynor Thrall meta. It was kind of ridiculous. I like that they're toning it down. I still think it's gonna be that, but it's not gonna be as dominant as it was. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. I will see you all next time. Bye bye.